able to draw one more breath. And Sharon Henderson was singing the 23rd Psalm, and it brought me through. So thank you, Sharon, for ministering to me all that time, a long time ago. And thank you for ministering to us right here now at Agape Bay Area with your wonderful musical presentations. Thank you, Sharon D. Henderson, and Reflection. Oh, so good morning, everyone. Here we are. Spring has sprung. We are all here. We've come to co-create and play and have a good time in spirit. And we're getting to talk today about Verdant, Verdurous, Vintage You. And yes, like Reverend Jones says, my titles do require writing down because spirit shoots them through me. And sometimes they seem nonsensical or they're not easy to understand. However, they are what they are because I know that spirit knows what it's doing with, through, and as me. So I want to tell you a story. I want to start us off with a story tonight. Today. However, before we get to that, our theme this month is Your Vibrant Life. Doesn't that sound exhilarating? It sounds really exhilarating and fueling to me, your vibrant life, because our theme this whole year is Soaring to New Heights. Woo, here we go, soaring to new heights. However, let's start with it's kind of a fairy tale. It's kind of a story. I may have told it to you before. You may have heard it before. However, it bears repeating here today. So there was this group of fairies, and all these fairies were living together quite happily and just living their lives and doing what it is that fairies do. And you can decide for yourself what you think that might be. However, they're doing what fairies do. And then there was a new fairy born who seemed to be what they were calling an ugly fairy. Now, we know beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And my grandma Verona used to say, beauty is as beauty does. However, a fairy was born that appeared to be ugly. And so this fairy did everything that it could to fit in with the other fairies. And it really just towed the line, did everything that everyone else did, and not in a way of just melding in, but doing what was theirs, being what was theirs to be, with conscientiousness and strength and loyalty and tenacity and resilience. And so the fairies who lived in tandem, sometimes peacefully, sometimes not, with the witches. And I want to add here that in this story, the witches turn out to be the people that aren't the best, the highest and the best. However, witchcraft is not that, does not particularly, I'm not advocating that that's what witchcraft is. However, the witches came and took over the fairies. They colonized them. They raped and pillaged them. They just came and took over the fairies, okay? However, during their takeover of the fairies, all the fairies had the similar look, similar way of being, similar beauty, except the little ugly fairy. And so when the witches took over all the fairies, the little ugly fairy slipped out of from the rest of the fairies, okay? And was kind of not living with the witches, was not one of them, but just coexisting there. And during the time that the witches had taken over the fairies, the little ugly fairy came up with a spell that made the witches completely lose their desire to take over the fairies. Completely, all of a sudden they woke up and said, what are we doing here? We don't need to take over the fairies. We have our own life to live. We have our own things to bring. We have our own way to live in the world. And so they let all the fairies go. Okay, so the fairies realized that it was the little ugly fairy that had done this by making up a spell of her own, so that for centuries and eons, the fairies always were very happy and rejoicing when an ugly fairy was born, because they knew that there was something coming. You know, they knew that it was kind of like sand in an oyster. We know that a gorgeous, beautiful, unique, one of a kind pearl is coming. So that's what the fairies realized when they got an ugly, what quote unquote, what they called an ugly baby. Now, why am I telling you this whole fairy ugly story? Because I want to talk about and co-create together and be in the playfulness of Verdant, Virtuous, and Vintage You. So of course I went back to my dictionary roots and I looked up some of these words, because actually when we were, Reverend Cindy, Reverend Joan, and I were being with our titles for these months and what was coming up. And when Your Vibrant Life came up, both of them said, oh, Reverend Verona, you'll probably use Verdant. And it's like me to use that. So, however, I consider myself to be a wordsmith in that I enjoy words, knowing that words are not the real meaning behind the words, it's spirit behind the words. However, I looked up the word. So verdant, what came up for verdant was green and inexperienced. So we can look at that in several different ways. Green can be like green, like ecologically green. Inexperienced can be a wonderful thing because we might be inexperienced in the ways of the world, inexperienced in the race consciousness, inexperienced in generational belief systems that have nothing to do with us. And I want to share with you, it's coming for me to share with you that there's some generational belief systems in my family. One of the generational belief systems in my family is that because we are African American, we are prone to hypertension. And so that was just a generational belief system in my family for as long as I can remember. All the generations before me, and all the generations before me had an opportunity for their life to show up in a way that became the truth. Okay, and so I recently have been dealing with that myself. I'm going to be open and transparent and vulnerable here. I've been dealing with it myself, and it's become clear to me in the last few days that I get to be the generation where it stops. I get to be the one that really truly embraces the belief system that it is no longer a part of us just because we are African American and circulatory systems might be, our circulatory systems might be less than, because there is no such thing in spirit. So when we think about being green and inexperienced, inexperienced can mean that you are no longer experienced in just dragging around over your shoulder, carrying that bag of beliefs that have nothing to do with the truth of who and what is happening for you right here and right now. Because if we allow ourselves to stay in the present, not in the past, and all those other things, or in the future, like the what ifs, what if, then we get to realize, you know what, being green and experienced, being verdant is a pretty cool thing. It's a pretty wonderful thing, and it's who and what each one of us is. So the next word is verdurous, and verdurous is a freshness and a vigor. So how does that feel? Freshness and vigor. You know, even on the days that I feel slumpy, I still would like, there's a certain freshness and vigor about me. And yes, for those of you who are asking, I can see it in Val's face. Yes, there are days that I feel slumpy. I know you all are thinking, oh, wow, she's always a bundle of energy. And there are those days that I just feel, that's my own made up word, slumpy. I don't know if it's a word. However, for those days that I might feel outside of myself, that we, each of us might feel outside of ourselves, we get to be virtuous. We get to know that there's a freshness and a vigor that's within us, and that all is required is for us to just open the doorway just a little bit, and for it to come out, and then its existence can either blow out, deluge out, trickle out, or whatever it is within and as each one of us. And so then the next thing about is vintage you. Okay, because we live in Northern California, vintage is a word we use a lot because of wine. And also because vintage is also cars. Vintage can be something. And so, really, what vintage is the best of its kind or the highest quality. And really, really, truly, what do you think about yourself? Are you the best of its kind? Are you the highest quality? You know, and I know sometimes it might be a challenge to think this, because sometimes I do this wonderful exercise where in the morning in the bathroom when I'm brushing my teeth, I say, I love you. And it's not the easiest exercise to do. Look straight into my own eyes and say, I love you. However, the more I say it, the more I believe it, the more I believe it, the more it shows up, the more consciousness takes form. So when you realize that each one of us is the best of its kind, that we are the highest quality. Now, sometimes being green has some implications like naivete, or even some people even say dumbness or something like that. It has nothing to do with any of those things. It has to do with being what we're talking about here. Inexperienced in old belief systems, having a freshness and a vigor, and also being the best of its kind, being the very highest and best of its kind. So I would like us to do just a little exercise. I'd like you to close your eyes. It's not long. And just take a deep breath. And of course, exhale. And while you're doing this, I'd like you to think of 5 things that you cherish, that you adore, that you savor in their essences. 5 things. And I'm going to give you a minute. Once again, 5 things that you savor, that you adore, that you cherish in its essence and substance. Okay, just about 10 more seconds. Allow it to just, and let's not make this hard. Just allow it to flow through. We are in this place, this vortex of co-creativity together, so it gets to just flow right into our knowingness. Okay, so you have your 5 things. Everyone has their 5 things. Yes? Yes. So that list of things, those 5 things that you adore, that you cherish, that you savor, that you are just absolutely positively in the depth of love with, where were you on that list? Where were you? Were you number 1 on the list? Were you number 5 on the list? Were you number 6 on the non-existent number 6 on the list? So I just did that exercise. I love that exercise because it's to remind us, it's to remind myself and all of us sometimes where we put ourselves. You know, are we in a place of realizing that the beingness that we are, the beingness that we are, is our opportunity to love, to cherish, to savor, and to completely adore that we are. Just like it says in the reading from Abraham Hicks, your importance is not in question. We completely understand your immense value. We know that you deserve to have the energy that creates worlds. And for those of you who may not be familiar with this reading, Esther Hicks and Jerry Hicks, who is now on the other side, Esther Hicks does the readings of Abraham. And it's not really a channeling, it is just her opening to the words and the phrases of Abraham, which is a name that Abraham has given itself, the beingness of spirit that it is. So once again, I want to remind you, your importance is not in question. Think of it. Your importance is not in question. And this is from Abraham is saying this. We completely understand your immense value. We know that you deserve to have the energy that creates worlds. Just breathe that in, because, you know, were you aware that all the desires you have are the desires of the heart of spirit making itself known within and through and as you? That all the desires of the universe, you know, I'm not saying that spirit is like a detective hunting and looking and all this. However, spirit is aware of the vessels that we are, and that each one of us gets to be the conveyance for all of the desires of the heart of spirit, all the longings of the heart of spirit, because that brings together the entire universal essence, substance, energy. I mean, so many words, so much more, because we are each, you know, I know that a lot of people do puzzles, and we're each an integral part of the puzzle of life. Each one of us, you know, when you do the puzzle, and I do them electronically, but you know, when you get that final little piece and you get to put it in there, and that feeling you have, the exhilaration you have, you are that piece. I am that piece. We are that piece. Just like Reverend Jones starts us off with telling us we are the light. The light of the piece of the puzzle of spirit is who and what each one of us is. So you get to absolutely accept and declare and know that this is who and what you are. So I'd like to step into another reading. It's the reading from Spiritual Liberation from our own Reverend Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith, because it speaks about radical aliveness. And this radical aliveness principle, when I first read about it in that book, I thought, pshaw, not for me. No, Dr. Beckwith. There are times when this is not going to work for me. However, I have come to really embrace it, to appreciate it, to love it, to really know that this is who and what the truth is of me. And if it's the truth for me, it's the truth for you, because there is really only one of us here. We're each our own individuation. We each have our own beauty, our own skin color, our own hair, our own makeup, our own jewelry, our own da 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 da. However, this is all spirit expressing itself in its own multitudinous ways. However, it says in the reading from Spiritual Liberation, there is no personal power. There is no personal power. There is no personal power. We awaken, and I'm paraphrasing, we awaken to the realization of the one power operating through us and enlivening all of creation. So think about it. It's the one power that's enlivening all of creation through us, expressing through us. And so we get an opportunity from this second onward to express the truth. We get an opportunity to living in the fullness of radical aliveness. and the ways in which we get to live in radical aliveness. Now, I've been with this radical aliveness. The reading came to me actually one day when I was at the gym again. Yay! The gym is open again, and it came to me when I was at the gym in an opportunity to rebuild the muscles that took a little break during the pandemic. And so I've been, it was about 10 days ago. And so I've been being with radical aliveness, radical aliveness. What does it feel like? What does it look like? What feeling tone does it have? And so it came to me that first radical aliveness, part of it is that, that feeling that you get when you're at the very top of the roller coaster. Now, in all transparency, truth here, I don't do roller coasters. I'm sure there are some people here watching or listening or part of this Zoom. I'm quite sure that one of my offspring is here who knows I don't do roller coasters. So I'm not going to say I do roller coasters. I do Ferris wheels. However, that feeling when you get right to the very top, right when you know what's coming and it's going to be just so wonderful and exhilarating and splendiferous. However, that's the feeling tone of radical aliveness. That's the feeling tone that we have an opportunity to have with us at every second of every moment of every day. And the ways that we have an opportunity to do that is, first, we get to live full out in artistry and the beauty of the beingness that we are. Just live full out. We get to, and by several ways to do that, one of the ways is do something you love. Just do something you love just because you love it. Daily, do something you love. Just do it as a daily practice of gift delivery. And by that, I mean delivering your gifts to the planet. Or you can do something like really living full out in artistry and beauty. Our own Reverend Cindy Edelston does paint parties. You can do something like that. You can really like get into the real artistry, what you might conceive as artistry. There are all sorts of ways of being in the fullness of artistry and the beauty of the beingness that we are. So that's one way we get an opportunity to participate in radical aliveness. Another way we get to is we get to fathom and interpret our own inner power. Fathom and interpret your own inner power. And the ways that happens is in the stillness. We get to listen in awareness. And, I invite you, suggest, I can't think of another word. However, spend some time in the stillness daily. And even if that time you spend in the stillness is in the shower, I learned something a long time ago from Reverend Joan. She probably doesn't even remember that when you're in the shower, you can allow yourself to let the water wash over you and know that wherever you're taking a shower, that's the holy water. For me, it's the holy water of Oakland. That's where I live. But any water is holy because it's spirit itself. And you can let the holy water wash over you and wash away every single thing, every concern or every thought or a challenge that you brought into that shower with you. And you can be in that spot in the stillness and in the awareness. You can allow yourself to be in whatever ways you'd like, because from the meditation class that we had earlier this year, a lot of people thought that they didn't like to meditate. However, meditation is not sitting on the pillow. It is being in the stillness. It's not sitting in one space in a certain stance, holding your body a certain way. It is allowing yourself to sink into the depths of the stillness that is already within you. The stillness is in us. The stillness is in us, and the stillness is doing this. You can see my hands. Just what Sharon's saying to us. Come on in. That's what the stillness is saying. Come on in. I'm here, and we have quite the conversation to have without any words, without any sounds. So one of the other ways we can be in radical aliveness is just be in the stillness, and in that stillness, let the awareness wash over you. And by that, I mean, each one of us has our own inner linguistic vocabulary. What comes in through me doesn't come in through you. However, if you allow yourself to make the stillness a place of comfort and familiarity, you'll start understanding your own inner language, your own inner conversation, and it comes through, and it allows you to know, this just what's your inner power, because your inner power is already in there. Once again, it's just awaiting your activation. And the other way to live in radical aliveness is give thanks. And I know this might sound like a broken record, however, it is not. Give thanks in all things. Give thanks for the things that appear to you as blessings. Give thanks for the things that don't appear to be blessings. Just give thanks in all things, no matter what. Give thanks, because it activates that attitude of gratitude. It activates the energetic of the circulatory generosity and givingness of spirit. It activates all those longings, desires, things you're thinking about, dreams, even goals. it activates that, just being in that attitude of gratitude. It is an energetic of its own. And after all, it's all energy. We're energy, like you're looking at me here, and we're looking all at each other. If you're not just looking at me, it's all energy. It's just energy taking form. So I've been thinking all for about 10 days. So how's this showing up in my life? Because I want to, I don't want to say, okay, do this, do this, do this, do this, and it'll be okay, because that's not the way it is. So I realized how this is showing up in my own life. In the last 10 days, I have had the opportunity to write not one, not two, but three bios of myself that are for public consumption, that are for social media. And I've known it for about 2 weeks. And about 10 days ago, I thought, okay, get on the bios. And then I got stuck. And then about 3 or 4 days later, okay, Verona, you need to do those bios, I got stuck. A day or two later, actually, in the middle of the night, I woke up. Come on, VFG, you need to do the bios. I got stuck. And then I realized the reasons I was stuck was I was not believing all these things I just shared with you. The reasons I was stuck was that I was in a place of having old generational or race consciousness beliefs about myself. I have to be honest and transparent and share with you. I was in a place of saying, well, what do I have to put in a bio? Well, what do I accomplish that can go in a bio? Well, what if my bio is not as good as the other bios? Yes, now I fell into a place of comparison and realizing that it is, finally, I came to know in about 4 days ago, it's not about comparison. It's about knowing that we are all in the oneness. We are all jewels in the crown. We are all, each one of us, an individuation of spirit, and each one of us brings something that no one else can bring. So when I really let myself first live full out in artistry and in an artistry and beauty of being, that really got me going. And how I did that was I like to cook. That is to say, I like to use recipes as a creative resource for me. And so I like to make things, but I like to change the recipes. And sometimes it comes out good, sometimes it doesn't. However, I like the joy of it, and I like laughing with myself about it. Like, oh, well, I'm going to shift this. Well, I'm going to shift that. Well, let's try this. Well, let's try that. And I realized that is an outsourcing of the creativity of spirit that I am. Just like painting is for some people, that is for me. So I started making a bunch of things, and I started learning a bunch of new ways to prepare my foods. And it was fun, and it was interesting, and some of it came out wonderfully. Some of it came out, well, let me say, because I was raised by in the Midwest by Midwesterners. I don't throw food away. However, some of it was the kind of food that I got to get it down with a big glass of water. So that's one of the things I did before the bios. Really, I allowed the bios to pour through me. The other thing I did was really just be in the stillness, and in the stillness, that I was in that place of awareness of what I just shared with you, that I was having all these comparison ideas. I was going into the not enoughness chamber and locking myself into that pressure chamber and not letting myself out, instead of versus realizing you are who you are. You are the I am that I am, and everything that you are is spirit expressing itself. You are myriad channels of spirit being itself. And then the last thing that I did was, of course, give thanks. I gave thanks for the being in the artistry and the beauty, and I gave thanks for being in the stillness. And I gave thanks for having fun doing what I call crafts, doing recipes that I switched them up and changed them upside down and really just had a fun time with them. And lo and behold, about 3 or 4 days ago, maybe 5 days ago, while I was doing all of this, the three bios poured out of me. I sat down with my iPad and I couldn't move my fingers hardly fast enough. Zoom, 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 zoom. The three bios poured out of me. And when I read all three of the bios too, the important thing was that I believed them. I know that this is who spirit is in, through, and as me. So I'm inviting you to do all of these things. I'm inviting you to live full out in artistry and beauty. I'm inviting you to fathom and interpret your inner power by being in the stillness and the awareness. And through it all, as it all, and in it all, give thanks, no matter what. Just give thanks, no matter what, because you are verdant, you are virtuous, and you are vintage. So I'm inviting you, I'm imploring you, and I'm going to be checking with you. So do not be surprised if I get in touch with you and check with you and say, well, how's that going? However, I really don't need to check with you, because we are now each giving it an opportunity to be the brilliant, radiant light of spirit that each one of us is. This is our opportunity today. This is our invitation. And as my wonderful prayer partner, Ejia Grace Angel Leslie Marguerite Frazier always says, there's been an invitation given by Spirit, and now it is ours to RSVP. In what ways this week, every second, every moment, every day will you RSVP? Let's pray.